Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. It's an engaging and enlightening talk show on life, relationships, and the business of life. Grab a cup of juice and just chill. Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. Live life. Live fully.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Hello, once again, this is Omobola Stephen, the host of Live Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. On Live Well Lived by Omobola Stephen, we like to focus on personal development and self-improvement because we also understand that personal development and self-improvement is a lifelong process that we all must need to embrace in order for us to move from where we are to where we need to be. Now, it's really what's the effort at the end of the day if we put a mind to it. Now, today I have Julie Noonan, who is an executive coach and a strategic change consultant, who is going to be talking to the audience about the women's wisdom, the legacies they leave behind. Welcome with me on Live Well Lived, Julie Noonan.
Thank you very much for having me on Omobola.
Thank you so much, Julie. I really appreciate your time and also the valuable contribution you audience on today going forward. Julie, you help women business leaders over 50 live legacies of wisdom. Now, why do you choose this particular niche?
Oh, well, because basically I was laid off in my 50s. And one of the things that happened as part of that layoff was I had a lot of time to stop and reflect on my life. And one of the things that I'm really, really passionate about is taking a look at what my legacy is going to be. I was thinking about what am I going to do next? What am I passionate about? Taking a look back at the individuals, particularly the women that are coming up behind me in my profession, as well as just women in business. I think COVID really gave us all a break and it gave us time to reflect. And one of the things I'd been reflecting on was my daughters. I have 2 adult daughters, and my oldest and I had a conversation. And it was a conversation that was probably the first woman to woman, business to business type conversation that we had had. And it struck me after we had had this conversation that, wow, I've had these kinds of conversations with millennials and Gen Z at my company and in my professions and in my, former companies before, but I'd never really thought much about it. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, wow, we have iconic wise women in all cultures across the board. We have these iconic wise women that stand in the background, that keep societies going, but that when things fall apart or when things get iffy, when we have a crisis like COVID, they're the ones that societies tend to turn to. They're the ones that keep the fabric of who we are together. It's not the leaders who are standing in front. It's generally speaking, it's the women who are standing in the background, who are keeping the fabric of who we are together. And I decided at that point in time, when I had all of these we were forced to consider the idea of remote collaboration. We were forced to consider some of the more, I guess, radical ideas, or what we thought as boomers and early Xers, what we thought were radical ideas of the the new generations, they aren't so radical. We were just forced to face them sooner than we thought we were going to have to face them because of COVID. And frankly, interestingly enough, we found out they weren't that hard. They weren't that hard to incorporate into our daily working lives because we had to. Now that a lot of organizations are getting back to quote unquote business as usual, there's been a shift back to, going back to the way things were. And what we're finding is that the younger generations are to some degree rebelling. And so organizations and those of us of the older generations are having to moderate some of our demands, some of those ideas that were let out of the box aren't going away. And so we're coming up with hybrid solutions like, flexible work arrangements that are being demanded by the younger generations. We can't get away from that. We have to be more flexible. We have to recognize that these generations work to live. They don't live to work. They are not their professions. They are people first, professions second. And that's a radical difference between how some of us were brought up. Right now, I work with a lot of clients who are, getting into their golden years, and were so ingrained, or so they identify so hard with with their own profession, that they don't know who they are without that profession. I'm an accountant. Well, who are you? I'm an accountant. Well, who are you when you're not an accountant? They don't know. And that's kind of a shame, So I work with a lot of people who, once they leave their profession, they don't know who they are. So hopefully with this new generation, they are a person first and a profession second.
Right. So now talking about culture, how do you think culture impacts the bottom line?
I think culture, if it is a culture that puts people first, puts their well-being first, that rubs off and shows up to customers. When customers feel that, when customers sense that, customers automatically come back to the organization to purchase services and goods. Because when someone feels like they're taken care of, when someone feels like that they matter to an organization, truly matter, then that shows up to a customer. When a person feels like they're a cog in a wheel, they're easily replaceable, then that also shows up to a customer. And it makes it easier for a customer to go somewhere else to buy a cheaper version of a good or service. So I think culture for sure impacts the bottom line.
I agree. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that, Julie. Moving forward, do you think that men, talking about living legacies, because this is what we're focusing on now, we talked about women's wisdom, the legacies we leave behind, but really, do you think that men and women think about living legacy differently? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think they do, but I don't want to generalize too much. I think they probably are getting closer and closer to thinking the same thing over time. However, I think women tend to think of leaving legacies in the people that they touch, leaving cultures that are caring, leaving individuals that perform well, that identify with a brand or are nurturing and caring of the people and the customers of an organization. Men typically will think about the balance sheet, the health of the actual organization, the growth of an organization, how well an organization is doing on the stock market, how long an organization has been around, that sort of thing. So it tends to be more the legacy of the organization as opposed to the people within that organization. That's a generalization. That's a generalization, but you know,
Sure.
that's kind of how I think about it.
All right. Thanks for that perspective. Age discrimination, we are talking about that, especially in the workplace, and I think it's a general issue. And even in the current job market that we find ourselves, what do you think this is so?
I think all of us, regardless of who we are, we can't get away from biases. We cannot get away from, you know, who we were born to, the situation we were born in, the culture we're born in, the beliefs that we are taught. You know, growing up within that first 3 to 5 years, you know, we are exposed to certain things and certain beliefs. Those beliefs and those observations, whether they come from parents or, you know, guardians, whether they come from whoever is influential around us, and whatever we see around us dramatically influences how we think, how we behave. Those things are very, very difficult to change. And a lot of those things, obviously, and this is just from neuroscience and cognitive awareness, a lot of those things are automatic. That it's very difficult to not automatically respond to a stimulus that is ingrained in you from the very beginning of time, of your time. However, there are ways for you to become more and more aware of your biases. And as you become more aware, to make choices about whether or not you pay attention to those biases. As you become more aware of those biases, you can choose whether or not to act upon those biases or to act differently when those biases do show up. So I think choosing whether or not those biases are detrimental to you or to others is where we need to focus more effort. I think a lot of individuals need more education around the impact of their biases and actions. That is where I think a lot more education needs to happen. So for instance, I may have a bias that causes me to act in a certain way, and I have absolutely zero idea of the impact that my behavior may have on another person. And if I'm not open to understanding that, you know, when I say this or disregard that, or for instance, someone mentioned to me the other day that that the fact that their company does not have Jewish holidays on the company calendar hurts them when they have other religious holidays listed. That's not something that I personally would have noticed, but this person is a Jewish person, so they noticed it. And I said, well, we definitely need to bring that up. We need to make it known, because I don't think it's an intentional hurt, but it's definitely something that we can rectify. So things like that is education, a lot of educational things. Where I think we hurt people on top of hurt is when we hear things like that and we discount. I think that happens a lot, that we discount the and we say, oh, we have to be politically correct. No, it's not about being politically correct. It's about being open and acknowledging that person has a point. That person is speaking out and has a legitimate hurt. You know, when we influential around us, and whatever we see around us dramatically influences how we think, how we behave. Those things are very, very difficult to change. And a lot of those things, obviously, and this is just from neuroscience and cognitive awareness, a lot of those things are automatic. That it's very difficult to not automatically respond to a stimulus that is ingrained in you from the very beginning of time, of your time. However, there are ways for you to become more and more aware of your biases. And as you become more aware, to make choices about whether or not you pay attention to those biases. As you become more aware of those biases, you can choose whether or not to act upon those biases or to act differently when those biases do show up. So I think choosing whether or not those biases are detrimental to you or to others is where we need to focus more effort. I think a lot of individuals need more education around the impact of their biases and actions. That is where I think a lot more education needs to happen. So for instance, I may have a bias that causes me to act in a certain way, and I have absolutely zero idea of the impact that my behavior may have on another person. And if I'm not open to understanding that, when I say this or disregard that, or for instance, someone mentioned to me the other day that that the fact that their company does not have Jewish holidays on the company calendar hurts them when they have other religious holidays listed. South, if you couldn't tell from my accent, I'm from the South in the United States, obviously, and well, if you heard my real accent, you would be really able to tell. And in the South, when I was growing up, it was even more of a taboo to have any kind of anything wrong up here. So I hid it a lot. I was not allowed to be sad. I was not allowed to have down days. I heard all the time, just get over it, just get over yourself, pull yourself up. Why do you have to be so negative? all of these things over and over and over. And this was not anything that I had any control over. So I was labeled difficult. I was labeled a rebel. I was labeled the black sheep of the family. I was brilliant. That was what I had going for me. I had the best grades. That was the way that I coped. That was the way that I was able to be accepted and acceptable in the family. But I was always the odd one out because of this mental illness. I would go into, days and weeks of not being able to be positive and happy and joyous like everyone else. It wasn't until I was in my mid 20s, married, that I finally was able to go to a therapist and be diagnosed. And even then, it was therapy. There was no medical intervention. So she had me, cracking marbles on the sidewalk and doing all of these things, but it wasn't addressing the real medical issue, the chemical issue in my brain. So it really wasn't until my 40s that got addressed with medication. So I struggled with depression, and therefore in my career, I had performance reviews that the same feedback would be given over and over and over. You're too emotional. You take things too personally. You're negative. You're this. You're that. Just labels. I always pulled it out in the end. I'm a great top performer, but there was always that but. Once I was diagnosed and I had the medication that would help me regulate that depressive cycle, it was night and day difference. It was a night and day difference for me. So all I can say is the hidden disability of mental health issues, luckily, and again with COVID and again with the younger generations, has been huge and has been freeing for a lot of people. And I think that organizations need to be aware that mental health is a real issue, that it's a real diagnosis, or there are real diseases and there are real medications and there are real therapies that need to be available to individuals without stigma, and that medical records need to be sealed. People don't need to know about them because biases are so heavy and so still out there. We need to protect those individuals.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for sharing your thoughts once again, Julie Noonan. Julie, do you have any exciting news you'd like to share? Perhaps an important, very dear to your heart project that's in the pipeline you also like to share?
Oh, I am getting ready. I am within a couple of weeks of launching my new website. It will be Iconic Wise Women Coaching. I can't wait. I have 3 new offerings. One for people like me who get laid off in their 50s and just need someone to help them transition. Short coaching assignment, a short coaching package to help them with that transition. And then another couple of packages that help people who are in their senior years just figure out what's next for them. And of course, I'm always available for change management consulting through jnoonanconsulting.com.
It's Thanks for sharing that with us. Thank you once again. I wish you best of luck in this project that you have, in even subsequent ones that is coming in the near future.
Thank you so much.
Julie, do you have any parting word you'd like to share, and also your social media handles and your website profile?
Have courage. Have courage. Things are changing, and it's exciting to be alive right now. It's an exciting time. Don't let the speed of change get you down. It is just grab its tail and ride with it. It's going to be fun.
Can you share your social media handles?
Pardon me?
Can you share your social media handles? We like to have them. Your social media handles.
I didn't hear.
Can you share your social media handles on your website?
Okay. It is jnoonanconsulting.com.
Your social media handles.
Oh, my social media is LinkedIn is the only place that I really am, and it is J Noonan Consulting.
All right, that's your professional platform. Good to know. Thanks for
Makes
that.
it easy.
Sure does. I appreciate your time, Julie Noonan, an executive coach and a strategic change consultant. You are here to share your thoughts on women's wisdom and the legacies they leave behind. Thanks once again for your valuable contribution to the topic of discussion. I wish you best of luck once again. Now, if you'd like to catch up with episodes of Legacies by Omobola Stephen, you can catch it on any podcast distribution platforms or course promotion platforms that you bump into online, and do have a great time as we listen to experts and professionals share their thoughts on topics or subjects under personal development and self-improvement. I need you to stay safe always. I talk soon.
Thank you so much.